My name is Hannah Brooks. I'm 28 years old. At 2:13 on the afternoon of September 9th, I sat at the head of a walnut conference table on the 4th floor of Mercer Valley Community Bank while my parents begged a loan officer to save their house. My mother, Denise Brooks, had one hand pressed against her chest like the room itself had offended her. My father, Martin Brooks, sat beside her with his jaw tight, his wedding ring tapping against a folder full of overdue notices. Across from them, my older brother Caleb kept looking at his phone, pretending the foreclosure documents did not have his name buried in the history of every bad decision that led them there. And beside Caleb sat his wife, Tiffany, wearing a cream silk blouse, a diamond tennis bracelet, and the same bored expression she had worn 8 years earlier, when she accepted the money that was supposed to send me to college. My mother looked at the loan officer and said, "We are good people. We just need someone with authority to understand that this family has been through enough." Then she turned toward me without recognizing why I was in the room. "Hannah," she said sharply, "you work in finance now. Don't just sit there. Explain to them that families help each other." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just opened the blue folder in front of me and slid one page across the table. At the top, beneath the bank seal, were the words, "Owner Authorization and Final Loss Mitigation Decision." My father frowned. "What is this?" I looked at him calmly. "It's the answer to your request," I said. What they didn't know was that Mercer Valley Community Bank no longer belonged to the man whose name was on the building. What they didn't know was that 18 months earlier, I had purchased a controlling interest in the institution through my private investment firm. What they didn't know was that the mortgage they had ignored, refinanced, borrowed against, and nearly destroyed was now held by a bank I owned. And they definitely didn't know that I still had the letter my mother wrote when she emptied my college fund and gave it to Tiffany for a kitchen remodel, a designer nursery, and a vacation to Cabo. Before I tell you how we ended up in that room, tell me where in the world you're watching or listening from, and what time it is there. I always like knowing where stories like this find people, especially women who were told to be grateful for crumbs while someone else was handed the whole table. If that kind of quiet comeback speaks to you, like this video and subscribe to Ultimate Revenge, because this is not a story about yelling at your parents. This is that story. I grew up in Ridgemont, Pennsylvania, in a white 2-story house on Alder Lane with black shutters, a sloped front yard, and a maple tree that dropped red leaves across the driveway every October. My father bought the house in 1998, 2 months before I was born. He worked as a claims supervisor for a regional insurance company. My mother was an elementary school reading specialist until Caleb was born, and after that she stayed home because, as she liked to say, children need a mother who is present. What she meant was that Caleb needed presence. I needed instructions. Caleb Brooks was 4 years older than me, golden in the way some sons become golden when their parents decide early that his wants are family goals and his mistakes are weather. When he was 10, he broke the neighbor's greenhouse window with a baseball, and my father said, "Boys need space to be boys." When I was 6 and dropped a glass mixing bowl while helping my mother bake banana bread, she told me, "Hannah, you have to be more careful. Things cost money." When Caleb forgot homework, he was creative. When I forgot a permission slip, I was irresponsible. When Caleb got a C in algebra, my parents hired a tutor named Mr. Lasky for $75 an hour. When I got a B+ in chemistry, my mother said, "You used to be more focused." I learned early that praise in our house was not distributed by effort. It was distributed by position. Caleb was firstborn, male, charming, athletic, and loud enough to fill every room before anyone asked whether there was space for someone else. I was quiet, organized, and useful. By the time I was 12, I knew where my mother kept the extra batteries, how to restart the router, which drawer had the appliance manuals, and how to call my father when the property tax bill arrived. I filled out my own school forms, I packed my own lunches. I ironed Caleb's dress shirts before his debate tournaments, because my mother said, "You're better at details, sweetheart, and your brother needs to focus. Your brother needs to focus." That sentence could have been printed on our family crest. My college fund began with my grandfather. Grandpa Brooks died when I was 7. He had been an accountant in Harrisburg, a quiet man with thick glasses, polished shoes, and a habit of slipping $2 bills into birthday cards. He did not trust my father's financial discipline. I know that now. At the time, I only knew that after his funeral, my mother sat me on the edge of my bed and said, "Grandpa left something special for your future." It was a custodial education account. Not enormous at first, but significant. $43,000 invested conservatively, with instructions that my parents contribute annually and use it only for my college expenses. My grandfather had also left Caleb money. More money, actually. Caleb's fund started at $60,000 because he was older and closer to college. My parents never hid that. They said it was practical. Practical was a word they used when unfairness required a clean shirt. Caleb's college fund paid for 3 semesters at Penn State before he dropped out to pursue entrepreneurial opportunities. Those opportunities included reselling sneakers, flipping used jet skis, a meal prep app that never launched, and a parking lot detailing business that closed after he forgot to renew the lease. My parents called him ambitious. I called him expensive, but only in my head. My fund was different. I treated it like a promise. I checked tuition costs before I knew how to drive. I read scholarship websites on the family computer. I made color-coded lists of accounting programs, finance programs, and business schools within 6 hours of home. I wanted to attend Temple University for finance, then maybe an MBA someday. I wanted numbers because numbers did not change their story depending on who was loved more. The first time I noticed something wrong was when I was 17. It was February 22nd, 8:39 at night. Snow had turned the front yard blue under the street lights. I was sitting at the kitchen table with acceptance letters spread in front of me. Temple had accepted me with a partial scholarship. Drexel had accepted me too, but even with aid it would cost more. I was leaning toward Temple because it made sense. My father opened the refrigerator, stared inside, and said, "We need to talk about expectations." I looked up. My mother was washing one mug by hand, though the dishwasher was empty. She did that when she wanted to appear busy instead of accountable. "What expectations?" I asked. "College," my father said. I smiled because I thought he meant choosing wisely. I know Temple is the best option financially. My mother set the mug down. "Hannah," she said, "your fund isn't quite where we hoped." I stared at her. "What does that mean?" My father sat across from me and folded his hands. "Markets change." The markets had not changed that much. "How much is in it?" I asked. My mother glanced at my father. He said, "A little under 9,000. For several seconds I could hear only the hum of the refrigerator. $9,000. The account that had held my grandfather's gift. Years of birthday checks. Supposed annual contributions. The future I had organized inside folders and color-coded tabs. I said, "Where did it go?" My mother picked up the mug again. My father cleared his throat. Some of it was borrowed during a difficult period. Borrowed for what? "Hannah, don't take that tone." "What was it borrowed for?" My mother's voice sharpened. "Your brother needed help." There it was. "Caleb." Always Caleb. I sat very still. "What kind of help?" My father leaned back as if I had become unreasonable by requiring nouns. He and Tiffany were starting their life. They had the wedding, the townhouse, some business debt. We intended to replace the money. Tiffany was Caleb's girlfriend then, though she was already behaving like she had married into a family trust. She was 23, with platinum blonde hair, a social media page full of marble countertops she did not own, and a laugh that made other people's discomfort feel like entertainment. "How much did you give them?" I asked. My mother said it wasn't like that. "How much?" My father looked away. My mother finally said, 38,000 at first. At first. The phrase opened a trapdoor. And then? My mother wiped the counter in small circles. Another 22 when the contractor needed payment. What contractor? For their kitchen. Their kitchen. They needed to improve the townhouse for resale value, my father said. Caleb said it was an investment. My voice came out quiet. "You gave my college fund to Caleb and Tiffany for a kitchen remodel." My mother snapped, "Don't be dramatic. Family money stays in the family." I looked at the acceptances letters on the table. "What about my education?" My father sighed. "You are smart. You'll get scholarships. You can work. You don't need the same cushion Caleb did." I did not know then that a sentence could permanently change the way a daughter hears her own last name. You don't need the same cushion. Short sentences are sometimes the only ones that survive impact. I said, "Grandpa left that money for me." My mother turned, eyes bright with irritation. "Your grandfather left it because he trusted us to make decisions for this family." "No, he left it for college." "Enough," my father said. "We are not debating this like a courtroom." I stood slowly. My mother said, "Where are you going? To my room?" "Hannah." I stopped. Her voice softened in the way it did when she wanted obedience to feel like love. "Your brother has always needed more support. You know that. You're independent. That's one of your strengths." I looked at her. At 17, I did not yet have the language for what she had done. I only knew she had turned neglect into compliment. I went upstairs and closed my door. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just took every acceptance packet from my desk and placed them in a drawer. That night, at 11:46, my mother slipped a folded letter under my bedroom door. I still have it. Hannah, I know you are disappointed, but one day you will understand that parents sometimes have to make hard choices. Caleb and Tiffany are building a family. You are capable in a way your brother is not. We did not take anything from you that you cannot earn back yourself. Please do not punish us with silence. We love you and expect you to act with maturity. Mom, we did not take anything from you that you cannot earn back yourself. I read that line until the words stopped looking like language. The next morning, I applied for every scholarship I could find: local business association, women's finance initiative, Rotary Club, church foundation, though we had not attended regularly in years, state grant, federal aid, work study. I wrote essays at the public library because home felt too small to hold my anger. Temple remained possible, barely. I took loans. I worked 25 hours a week at a campus payroll office. I rented used textbooks. I ate oatmeal for dinner more than once. I graduated in 3.5 years because every extra semester meant more debt. My parents came to graduation. They arrived 7 minutes before the ceremony started because Caleb and Tiffany were late getting ready at the hotel. Tiffany was pregnant by then, wearing a pale pink dress and complaining that the folding chairs were uncomfortable. My mother spent most of the ceremony fanning Tiffany with the program. Afterward, while I stood in my cap and gown under a sycamore tree, my father hugged me and said, "See? We knew you'd land on your feet." Caleb slapped my shoulder. "Little finance shark. Maybe you can manage my money someday." Tiffany laughed and said, "God, someone needs to." She wore a diamond tennis bracelet I recognized from Instagram. 2 weeks earlier, she had posted it with the caption, "Push present preview because my husband believes in celebrating early." It cost around $6,000. I knew because I had looked it up at 1 in the morning while calculating my student loan balance. That was the moment I stopped, hoping my parents would eventually admit what they had done and started planning a life that did not require their permission to matter. I moved to Philadelphia after graduation and took an entry-level analyst job at Fairmont Capital Recovery, a firm that purchased distressed commercial loans and underperforming debt portfolios. It was not glamorous. My desk faced a copier. My first salary was $52,000. I wore 2 rotating blazers and shoes that pinched by 3 o'clock. But the work made sense to me. Every loan had a story. Every default had a timeline. Every careless signature became a future consequence. I learned how people hid risk inside optimism. I learned how businesses collapse not only from failure, but from denial. I learned that the person who reads the fine print quietly often controls the room later. I was good at it. By 24, I was promoted to senior analyst. By 25, I had paid down half my loans. By 26, I left Fairmont and joined a private equity group specializing in community bank acquisitions and distressed assets. The work was demanding, precise, and full of men who underestimated me until I handed them numbers they could not argue with. My mentor was a woman named Vivian Mercer. Vivian was 62, widowed, sharp as cut glass, and uninterested in making ambition palatable. She founded Mercer Valley Community Bank with her husband in the 1990s and had expanded it across 5 counties before health issues forced her to consider selling. I met her during a loan portfolio review in February when I was 26. She watched me explain a non-performing mortgage pool for 12 minutes, then interrupted a senior partner twice my age. "Stop talking," she told him. "She's the only one in the room who read past page 7. After the meeting, Vivian invited me to lunch. We sat in a quiet restaurant with white tablecloths and terrible soup. She asked about my background. I told her enough, but not everything. When I mentioned education debt, she said, "Someone failed you early." It was not a question. I looked at her. She smiled slightly. Women like us do not become this familiar with contract language because life was fair. Vivian became a mentor first, then an investor, then the first person who believed I could build something of my own. At 27, I formed Brooks Asset Holdings with 2 minority partners and a tightly structured acquisition fund. We started small, distressed notes, commercial liens, underperforming rental portfolios. I worked from a rented office above a dentist in Lancaster. I ate lunch at my desk. I read until midnight. I invested carefully, not flashy, not loud, precise. I built it in silence. Then Vivian called. It was February 3rd, 8:06 in the morning. I was drinking coffee from a paper cup and reviewing a motel loan in default. "Hannah," she said, "how would you like to buy a bank?" I laughed once because I thought she was teasing. Vivian did not tease before 9. Mercer Valley Community Bank had become vulnerable, not failing but tired. Aging leadership, legacy mortgage book, strong deposits, poor digital systems, conservative clients, valuable bones. Vivian wanted it sold to someone who would not gut it. "Why me?" I asked. "Because you understand debt as consequence, not just product." The acquisition took 11 months. Regulatory reviews, capital requirements, partner negotiations, due diligence, board approvals, lawyers, auditors, more coffee than a body should legally survive. By the time the controlling interest transferred, I was 28 and exhausted in a way that felt almost holy. My name did not go on the building, that was deliberate. Mercer Valley Community Bank kept its name, its local branches, and most of its staff. Publicly, ownership transferred to a private holding group. Internally, I became controlling managing partner and chair of the credit review committee. I did not know my parents' mortgage was part of the bank's residential portfolio until March 22nd. I was in the main office reviewing high-risk loans flagged after acquisition. The spreadsheet contained 112 names. Most meant nothing to me. Then I saw Martin R. Brooks and Denise E. Brooks, primary residence, Alder Lane, Ridgemont. Mortgage modification history, 2 refinances, home equity line, delinquent 60 days. I stared at the screen. Alder Lane, the house with the maple tree. The house where my grandfather's gift had become Tiffany's kitchen. I clicked into the file. The first refinance had occurred when I was in college. Purpose, debt consolidation and family assistance. The second refinance came 3 years later. Purpose, home improvements. The home equity line had been drawn almost entirely within 6 months. Notes referenced transfers to Caleb Brooks for business capital, medical bills for grandchild, and repayment of private family loan. Caleb again, always Caleb. The mortgage was now severely overextended. My parents had missed payments in January and February. They were current on neither escrow nor the home equity line. Their debt-to-income ratio had deteriorated after my father's early retirement. My mother had no income. Caleb had apparently co-signed one private note, then defaulted. The file contained call notes. Borrower states adult son will assist. Borrower states daughter works in finance and may provide funds. Borrower requests delay due to family circumstances. I sat back. They had mentioned me before calling me, not to apologize, not to ask, to position me as future payment. At 5:30 that evening my mother called. I had not spoken to her in 6 weeks. "Hannah," she said warmly, too warmly. "How are you, honey?" I looked at the mortgage file open on my second monitor. "I'm well. We miss you." That meant they needed something. "How are you and Dad?" she sighed, as if invited onto a stage she had prepared for. "Things have been stressful. Your father retired earlier than planned, and with interest rates and repairs and everything we've done for Caleb's family, it has been hard." "What happened?" "The mortgage company is being unreasonable." "The mortgage company?" "Mercer Valley. They used to be community-minded, but now everything is cold and corporate. We just need some breathing room." I said nothing. My mother continued. "We thought maybe you could help us bridge a few payments, just temporarily." "How much?" She hesitated. 42,000 would get us stable. 42,000. Nearly the amount my grandfather originally left for me. Life has a strange sense of architecture. "What about Caleb?" I asked. "Oh, honey, Caleb is under so much pressure. Tiffany's business has slowed, and the children have school expenses." Tiffany's business was a home decor affiliate page that seemed to involve unboxing expensive lamps. "I see." My mother's voice softened. "You know, you have always been the responsible one." There it was again, the compliment shaped like a shovel. "Hannah, I'm here. We wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. This is our home." I looked at the file. 3 missed payments, equity drained, loss mitigation pending. "I'll think about it," I said. She exhaled. "Thank you. I knew you would understand." I understood perfectly. The next day, I requested the full loan history, including all borrower correspondence, modification requests, and equity disbursement details. Not because I planned revenge, because I do not make decisions without documents. On March 24th, the archive arrived. The history was worse than I expected. My parents had taken a $28,000 equity draw in May 6 years earlier to help Caleb and Tiffany launch a boutique baby clothing line called Little Finch. It failed after 9 months. They took another $35,000 in August 4 years earlier for Caleb's urgent tax issue. They refinanced again to pay off credit cards, many of which contained charges for Tiffany's interior designer, a leased Range Rover, and family trips to Rosemary Beach. They took hardship forbearance during my father's medical leave, then used part of a retirement distribution to pay for Caleb's second wedding anniversary party at a vineyard. There was a handwritten borrower letter from my mother dated June 7th the year before. We have always helped our son because he has a wife and children depending on him. Our daughter Hannah is financially independent and has no family obligations, so we expect she may be able to assist if required. No family obligations. I read that phrase 3 times. Then I printed the letter and placed it in a folder beside the one she had slid under my bedroom door when I was 17. 2 letters, 11 years apart, same message. Caleb's needs were family. Mine were optional. On April 1st, my parents visited my apartment in Philadelphia. They had never visited before. My apartment was on the 18th floor of a renovated textile building, with tall windows, exposed brick, and a view of the Schuylkill River. It was not extravagant, but it was mine. I had bought it after the bank acquisition closed, partly because I wanted an address no one could take from me. My mother looked around the living room and said, "Well, this is very modern." My father stood near the window. "Must be expensive." I offered coffee. They accepted. We sat at my dining table at 4:15 in the afternoon. My mother wore a navy cardigan and carried a leather handbag I knew Tiffany had given her for Christmas. My father looked smaller than I remembered, though maybe I had simply stopped seeing him as large. My mother opened with, "We are proud of you, Hannah." I waited. My father added, "Very proud. You've done well for yourself." For yourself. As if I had done it alone by preference, not necessity. My mother reached across the table and touched my hand. "That's why this is difficult. We need help. I know, we could lose the house. I know that too." Her face tightened. "How do you know?" I looked at her. "I work in finance." My father cleared his throat. "Then you understand these things can be negotiated. We just need enough to show good faith. 42,000. My mother looked relieved. "Yes, or 50, to be safe, of course." "Would Caleb contribute?" My father looked annoyed. "Your brother is not in a position." "Why not?" "He has children," my mother said. "He also received money from your home equity." My father frowned. "How do you know that?" I did not answer immediately. My mother pulled her hand back. "Hannah," she said carefully, "this is not the time to keep score." I opened the folder in front of me and removed my mother's old letter, the one from my bedroom door. She recognized it instantly. Her face changed. I placed it on the table between us. "We did not take anything from you that you cannot earn back yourself," I read. My father sighed. "That was years ago." I placed the second letter beside it, the one from the mortgage archive. "Our daughter Hannah is financially independent and has no family obligations," I read. "So we expect she may be able to assist if required." My mother's cheeks flushed. "Those were private documents. So was my college fund." Silence. My father looked at the river outside my window. My mother said, "We did what we had to do." "No," I said. "You did what you wanted to do, then called it family. Hannah, your brother was struggling. So was I. You got through it. I had to. And look at you now." There it was. The final insult dressed as validation. Because I survived, they considered the wound justified. I closed the folder. "I am not giving you money." My mother stared. My father turned back from the window. "Excuse me? I will not be paying your arrears." My mother stood so quickly, her chair scraped the floor. "After everything we've done for you." I looked up at her. "What did you do for me?" Her mouth opened. No answer came. My father said, "We raised you. Yes, fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head." Those were legal and moral obligations, not loans. His jaw tightened. My mother began to cry. Quietly at first, then with one hand pressed to her mouth. "You would let your parents become homeless?" "No, you are not homeless. You are in default." "Listen to yourself," she snapped. "Cold, just cold." I stood, no, informed. They left at 5:03. My mother did not take her coffee. After that, the calls increased. My father called twice a week with practical arguments. The market was bad. Banks were predatory. Family homes should be protected. My grandfather would be ashamed. That last one almost made me laugh. My mother sent texts with old photographs. Caleb and me in Halloween costumes, the maple tree in fall, my high school graduation, my grandfather holding me as a baby. Each image arrived like evidence submitted by someone who had forgotten the charge. Caleb called once. It was May 8th at 9:22 in the evening. "Han," he said as if we were close, "Mom's losing it." "Is she? Come on, you know they don't have the cash." "Do you?" He laughed under his breath. "I have 3 kids. You also had my college fund." The line went quiet. Then he said, "You're still on that?" I closed my eyes. "Still on that." A theft can age in other people's minds until they call it history. In yours it remains the day the door closed. "Yes," I said. I am still on that. Look, I didn't know all the details. You knew enough. Tiffany needed a stable house before the baby came. Mom wanted to help. With my money, family money. No, he sighed. You turned out fine. I looked around my apartment. The bank documents on my desk. The life built from exhaustion, discipline, and refusal. That doesn't make what happened fine. Caleb's voice hardened. So you're going to punish everyone because you're bitter? No, then help them. No, he laughed, but it came out ugly. Wow. Little Hannah got a corner office and forgot where she came from. I thought of the kitchen table, the acceptance letters, my mother's letter under the door. I remember exactly where I came from, I said. Then I hung up. By June, the mortgage entered formal loss mitigation review. As owner, I did not personally handle every file. That would have been inappropriate. Mercer Valley had procedures, compliance requirements, borrower protections, and review committees for a reason. I recused myself from initial servicing actions and assigned the file to a senior officer named Grace Patel, who had 20 years of mortgage restructuring experience and no patience for emotional manipulation. But ownership has responsibilities. When a borrower requests extraordinary relief outside standard policy, final approval comes to the Credit Review Committee. On August 5th, my parents submitted a hardship packet. Income reduced, expenses inflated, assets understated, family contribution anticipated. There it was again, anticipated. They had listed a proposed lump sum contribution from daughter in finance. No amount, no signed commitment. Just me placed on paper like a backup account. Grace called me into her office at 4:41 that afternoon. I want you to see this before committee, she said. I read the page. My face did not move. Grace watched me. She knew enough of the history to understand the shape of the problem, though not every detail. You can remove yourself entirely from the final decision, she said. I can. Or you can attend as owner, disclose the relationship, and ensure the bank follows documented policy. I'll attend. Hannah. I looked at her. You don't have to put yourself in that room. I know. Then why? Because at 17 I had no authority in the kitchen. Because at 28 I had earned enough to sit at the table. Because some people only recognize boundaries when they arrive on letterhead. I want the process to be clean, I said. Grace nodded. Then we keep it clean. The review was scheduled for September 9th at 2 o'clock at the main office. My parents believed they were meeting with senior bank representatives to appeal foreclosure and negotiate a rescue package. Caleb and Tiffany came because my mother insisted the whole family should present a united front. I assume Caleb came because he feared they would mention his debts. I assume Tiffany came because she did not like missing rooms where money might move. I arrived early. At 1:35, I sat alone in the conference room with my blue folder, looking out over downtown Ridgemont, the same town where I had ridden my bike to the library, the same town where my grandfather had opened my first savings account with a $20 bill and said, "Numbers tell you who respected the agreement." At 1:58, Grace entered with 2 committee members and the loan officer, Stephen Hale. She gave me a brief nod. At 2:04, my parents walked in. My mother saw me first. For 1 second, surprise crossed her face, then relief. "Hannah," she said. "Thank goodness." My father looked relieved too, though he tried to hide it. Caleb frowned. Tiffany glanced at me, then at the room, calculating. My mother leaned toward me before sitting. "I didn't know you would be here." "I know." "Good. You can explain our situation." I said nothing. The meeting began. Stephen reviewed the loan status, delinquent balance, escrow shortage, home equity exposure, prior modifications, current property value, risk rating, standard options, repayment plan, short sale, deed in lieu, market sale, limited modification subject to verified sustainable income. My mother interrupted at 2:12. "We are good people," she said. "We just need someone with authority to understand that this family has been through enough." Then she turned toward me. "Hannah, you work in finance now. Don't just sit there. Explain to them that families help each other." I opened my folder. The room became very quiet. I slid the page across the table. My father frowned. "What is this?" "It's the answer to your request," Grace said evenly. "Before we continue, formal disclosure. Brooks is the controlling managing partner of the ownership group that holds Mercer Valley Community Bank." My mother blinked. "What?" Caleb sat up. "Wait. What does that mean?" Tiffany's expression shifted first into confusion, then alarm. Grace continued. "Miss Brooks is also related to the borrowers, which has been disclosed and documented. The file has been reviewed according to bank policy by independent servicing staff. Final extraordinary relief requires owner authorization, which is why Ms. Brooks is present." My father stared at me. "You own the bank?" Controlling interest, I said. My mother whispered. Mercer Valley? Yes, Caleb muttered. You've got to be kidding me. Tiffany looked at my mother. You said she just worked in finance. I looked at Tiffany. I do, Grace continued with the decision summary. The bank would not approve a lump sum advance, principal forgiveness, or an unsupported modification based on anticipated family contribution. My parents did not qualify for the extraordinary hardship restructure because they had repeatedly extracted equity for non-housing purposes, failed to disclose certain transfers, and lacked sustainable income to support the current debt. However, Mercer Valley would offer 3 documented options. 1. List the property for sale within 30 days and receive a 90-day foreclosure hold, with remaining proceeds after payoff going to my parents. 2. Execute a deed in lieu and receive relocation assistance. 3. Enter a limited repayment plan only if Caleb and Tiffany repaid documented family transfers into an escrow reserve within 21 days. That last option was Grace's idea, not punishment. Documentation. Caleb's face went red. What transfers? He asked. Grace placed a schedule on the table. Equity distributions to or for the benefit of Caleb Brooks and Tiffany Brooks, totaling $187,600 over a period of 7 years. Based on borrower-provided statements and bank records. Tiffany's mouth opened. My mother said quickly, "Those were gifts." Grace nodded. "Then they are not income available to the borrowers and cannot support modification unless returned." Caleb looked at my father. "Dad?" My father rubbed both hands over his face. Tiffany turned to Caleb, voice low and sharp. $187,000, he whispered. "Not now." She laughed once. "Oh, now seems perfect." There it was, the united front cracking under arithmetic. My mother looked at me, eyes wet. "Hannah, please!" I folded my hands on the table. "Please what?" "Don't do this. I'm not doing this. The loan history did this. You could fix it. I could pay for it," I said. "That is not the same thing." My father finally spoke. "You bought our bank and waited for this?" "No. You expect us to believe that?" "I bought a bank. Your mortgage was one of many assets inside it. Your choices brought you here." Caleb scoffed. "Listen to her. She sounds like a villain in a movie." I looked at him. "No, Caleb. I sound like a woman reading the documents you hoped no one would read." Tiffany's eyes narrowed at him. "You told me your parents wanted to help." My mother snapped. "We did want to help. You had children." I looked at her. "And I had a future." The words landed, not loudly, clearly. My father closed his eyes. My mother went still. For a moment, the room held 2 versions of the same family. The one they had narrated, where I was independent and Caleb was needy, and the one on paper, where their favoritism had been refinanced until even the house could no longer carry it. My mother reached into her handbag for a tissue. "You don't know what it's like to be a parent," she said. "No," I replied. "I know what it's like to be your daughter." Stephen looked down at his notes. Grace remained expressionless, but I saw her pen pause. My mother whispered, "We made mistakes." I waited. She looked at the table. "We should have handled things differently. Still not enough." I took the 2 letters from my folder. One from when I was 17. One from the hardship packet. I placed them side by side. "You wrote these 11 years apart," I said. "In both of them, Caleb's needs are treated as family obligations. Mine are treated as things I can overcome. I am not here to punish you. I am here to stop financing that pattern." Tiffany stood abruptly. "I need air." Caleb grabbed her wrist. "Sit down." She pulled away. "Don't touch me." The room froze. Tiffany looked at my parents. "You told me Hannah didn't need the money." My mother said, "She didn't." Tiffany looked at me, and for the first time since I had known her, she appeared uncomfortable in a way that was not performative. "You knew?" I asked. She swallowed. "I knew they helped us. I didn't know it was your college fund at first." At first, she looked away. That was enough. Grace said, "The bank's offer remains available for 7 business days. After that, standard foreclosure timeline resumes." My father looked at the page again. "So we sell or lose it." "You sell, transition, and preserve what equity remains," Grace said. "Or you fail to act and the legal process continues." My mother looked at me. "Would you really let strangers buy our home?" I thought of my grandfather, of the maple leaves, of my teenage self at the kitchen table with acceptance letters she could barely afford to accept. "It stopped being ours when you treated it like Caleb's emergency fund," I said. My father's ring tapped once against the table. Then he asked the first honest question I had heard from him in years. "How much of your college debt is left?" I looked at him. "None." His eyes filled. "When did you pay it off? 2 years ago?" He nodded slowly, as if the number had struck him somewhere private. My mother did not ask how. That was the difference between them. My father sometimes failed because he was weak. My mother failed because she believed the hierarchy was righteous. The meeting ended at 3:27. Grace gave them printed copies. Stephen explained deadlines. Caleb left first, arguing with Tiffany under his breath. She walked 3 steps ahead of him, arms crossed, her bracelet flashing under the fluorescent lights. My parents remained seated. My mother looked smaller in the conference room chair. "Hannah," she said, "can we talk alone?" Grace looked at me. I said no. My mother's face tightened. "Not privately," I clarified. "We can talk with Grace present." She looked offended, but offense is what some people feel when accountability gets a witness. My father said denice, just that. Her mouth closed. Grace stayed. My mother folded the tissue in her lap. "I never meant to hurt you." I looked at her carefully. "I believe you did not care whether it hurt me." She inhaled sharply. "That is cruel." "No. It is specific." My father said, "Hannah, I am sorry." My mother looked at him. He continued, voice rough. "I am sorry we used your money. I am sorry I let Denise write that letter. I am sorry I told myself you were fine because it was easier than facing what we took." The room went still. My mother stared at him as if betrayal had finally changed direction. I felt something in my chest loosen, but not enough to undo the knot. "Thank you," I said. My mother whispered, "So he apologizes once and you forgive him?" "I didn't say I forgive him." "Then what do you want from us?" I thought about that. At 17, I wanted the money back. At 21, I wanted an apology. At 25, I wanted them to admit Caleb was not a weather system they had been forced to survive. At 28, sitting in a bank I owned, I wanted something quieter. "I want you to stop calling favoritism sacrifice," I said. My mother looked away. That was the closest she came to understanding. The house sold in November. My parents chose the 90-day sale option after Caleb and Tiffany refused, or were unable to return the funds. Tiffany moved into her sister's guest house with the children for 6 weeks after a fight with Caleb about money. Caleb blamed me for that too. People like Caleb often blame the smoke alarm for the fire. The Alder Lane house sold to a young couple with a toddler and another baby on the way. They loved the maple tree. They offered enough to pay the mortgage, settle the equity line, and leave my parents with a modest amount for a smaller rental in Lancaster. On closing day, November 18th, my father sent me a photograph of the empty living room. "Your mother cried," he wrote. "I did too. I know now a house can remember what people refuse to say." I did not answer immediately. That evening, at 8:10, I wrote back, "I hope your next home is honest." He replied 3 minutes later, "Me too." My mother did not speak to me for 4 months. Then, on March 2nd, she sent a birthday card, cream envelope, blue ink. Her handwriting had not changed. Inside was a check for $200. The card said, "Hannah, I know this does not repay what was taken. I do not know how to repair the past. I am trying to understand things I should have understood sooner." Mom, it was not enough. But unlike her first letter, it did not deny the theft. I deposited the check into a scholarship fund I had created through Brooks Asset Holdings for first-generation female finance students. Then I added $42,000 of my own. Not because I needed symbolism, because some money deserves to become what it was meant to be. The first recipient was a 19-year-old named Marisol Vega from Reading, Pennsylvania, who wanted to study accounting and had written in her application essay, "I like numbers because they tell the truth even when people do not." When I read that sentence, I sat back in my office and smiled. Not triumphantly, softly. There are circles life closes without asking permission. Caleb and I did not reconcile. He sent one message after the house sold. "Hope you're happy." I wrote back, "I am peaceful." He did not respond. Tiffany filed for separation the following summer. My mother said it was because financial stress broke them. I suspect honesty did. Tiffany called me once in July. I almost did not answer. When I did, she said, "I owe you an apology." I waited. "I knew your parents had taken some money from an account for you. Caleb told me you were fine with it because you had scholarships." I didn't ask enough questions because the answers benefited me. That was more honest than anything she had said in a decade. "Thank you," I said. "I sold the bracelet." I looked up from my desk. "What?" "The tennis bracelet. I sold it. I put the money into an education account for the kids." I closed my eyes. "Good. I'm sorry, Hannah. I believe you. That did not make us friends, but truth, when spoken without excuses, deserves to be recognized." My father now calls every other Sunday. Sometimes we talk for 8 minutes, sometimes 20. He asks about work. I ask about his blood pressure. He does not ask for money. That is our progress. My mother is harder. She still struggles not to mention Caleb as if his life is a weather emergency, and mine is a climate-controlled office. But sometimes she stops herself mid-sentence. Sometimes she says, "I suppose you had difficult years too." Sometimes she looks at me with an expression I cannot fully read. Regret, maybe. or the discomfort of seeing a daughter she once underestimated become someone she cannot command. I no longer need to know which. People ask, when they hear pieces of this story, whether buying the bank was revenge. It wasn't. Revenge would have required them to remain the center of my ambition. They did not deserve that much space. I bought the bank because I understood value where others saw aging systems. I bought it because Vivian believed in me. I bought it because I had spent years learning how money moves, how signatures bind, how debt reveals character, and how institutions can either crush people or hold them accountable. My parents simply arrived at the intersection of their choices and my authority. That is not revenge, that is consequence with paperwork. And maybe that is the quietest power of all, not making people suffer, not shouting old wounds across a table, not becoming cruel because cruelty was once used against you, but building a life so solid that when the people who once drained your future come asking you to rescue theirs, you can look at the documents, tell the truth, and still sleep that night. If you are listening to this and you were the responsible child, the independent one, the one who didn't need as much, though expected to understand when your dreams were delayed so someone else's comfort could be protected, I want you to hear me. Needing less should never be punished. Being capable should never make you less worthy of care. Surviving what they did does not mean what they did was acceptable. You are allowed to stop being the family safety net when the family used your future as rope. And if they call that cold, let them. Sometimes cold is just the temperature of a boundary no one can burn through anymore. Thank you for spending this time with me and with Hannah Brooks's story here on Ultimate Revenge. Stories like this are for every woman who was told to be mature while others were indulged, to be grateful while others were funded, and to be helpful when the same people who emptied her future needed saving. If this story reminded you of your own family, I hope you remember that dignity can be quiet and still immovable. Follow Ultimate Revenge for more stories about women who were underestimated, betrayed, and quietly took their power back. So tell me, if your parents gave your college fund away and later asked you to save their house, would you help them or would you let the document speak?